Let me explain that I'm writing this for Audrey, because I know she would have wanted her story told. The real story, not what you might have read in the papers or on some news website. And by that very admission, you might judge correctly that Audrey is no longer around to tell the story herself. Although, in a way, she will be telling it. I worked with Audrey in the local police department at Heathnow, a small community you probably never heard of, that is in the south of England near Dover. I'm still working there. I was Audrey's replacement after she died. Audrey was a detective sergeant and had come up through the ranks the fabled hard way. Of course, not only was she fighting the glass ceiling of gender prejudice, but also that she'd been born into a large poor family in East London. By some miracle, she'd excelled at school, helped no doubt by a near genius IQ. She'd been a bit of a tomboy in her teen years during the 1970s, although she had not been a lesbian as some of her originally conformist classmates had guessed. She was tough, but her looks and demeanor softened in later years. In the early 1990s, when I met her, she had taken to wearing the kind of dresses and fashion accessories that had been popular in the 1960s and which have since become popular again since the turn of the millennium with a retro vengeance. Audrey's favorite colors were sky blue and black, and we could usually find her attired in a tight sleeveless sheath dress of one of those colors on any given day of the week, including her one day off. She also liked to sport a pearl necklace, a slender silver wristwatch, and almost microscopic diamond earrings. Her hair was auburn and done in a moderately short, wavy bob that stopped at the bottom of her neck. She wasn't beautiful in the cliché traditional sense of the word, but I always found her enormously attractive despite her gangly, sometimes awkward carriage. She looked like a cross between British actress Anna Massey and American actress Audrey Totter, who had starred in numerous 1940s noir films. For a short time during the first year I knew her, I had a huge crush on Audrey. We'd ended up in bed together, and at the start it seemed we might really make a go of it. But little things in our personalities, especially my immaturity since I was 2 years younger, and the fact that we were both in the police served to sabotage things. Our love affair slowly, inevitably had the rug pulled out from under it. However, we remained close and were good friends up until the day she died. It was 1996 when Audrey really hit her stride as an absolutely spot-on, brilliant detective, and she was constantly being ridden hard for it by our boss, Superintendent Bill Mallory, a white-haired, by-the-book martinet with a florid complexion and a reputation of being entirely too cozy with local politicians in the surrounding villages. Anytime Audrey hit pay dirt and made an arrest, he would get flustered and resentful. The television show Prime Suspect was enormously popular right then, and he would often quip to Audrey, "Who the fuck do you think you are anyway? Fucking Helen Mirren?" She would always narrow her eyes demurely and give him a sly, feline grin, something which drove him right round the bend. She had so many successes: the apprehension of the Palestinian businessman who had killed his mistress when she found he was smuggling opium and Indian-made sporting goods, the arrest of a notorious band of football hooligans who'd been responsible for the torture, rape, murder of a young African exchange student, to name just 2 examples. These were arrests that made not just local news, but headlines across the nation. Mallory couldn't do anything in the end except promote her to detective sergeant. It rankled him horribly that she was a woman with the highest success rate of any of the subordinates who had ever had the misfortune to serve under him. Nevertheless, Mallory knew that, despite Audrey's humble modesty, her glory reflected back of him, and her successes were his as well. They had had a few set-tos when Audrey had refused to toe the line and go easy on ruffling the feathers of certain influential shitbirds in our insulated community. But I had been there to support her, so those things had settled into an uneasy truce between them. Most likely she would never have risen above the rank of detective sergeant, but she didn't care. She was doing what she was good at, and she loved it. It was late in the spring of 1998 when I was on a much delayed 3-week vacation that Audrey's final case came to a head. While I was gone, she left me a detailed account of what was happening with her and to her, and what I was to do if she did not end up ever seeing me again. I am going to quote virtually all of it below, interjecting my own insights and conjectures once or twice to put the puzzle together. As preface, during the 4 months before I had left on holiday, we had had 2 horrific murders in the adjacent villages, Galmore and Reddingshire. Both were single, attractive young women in their early 30s found strangled and sexually assaulted. One had been an Irish secretary from Dublin on holiday by herself. The other was a popular Reddingshire shopkeeper about to be married to a well-known barrister in Dover. Audrey and I were assigned to the cases and soon learned from tireless research that there had been a string of 5 similar homicides in neighboring counties just north of us during the past year. The ages of the girls ranged from 16 to 35. By accident, we discovered through Interpol, just before I left, that there had been 2 similar killings in Belgium, one in Ostend near the ferry departure point at the port, and another in a suburb of Brussels 2 years before. There were some obvious forensic similarities in the majority of cases that led Audrey and I to believe they were linked, and that one person had done them all. Audrey describes these similarities in vivid detail late in her account. I'd been reluctant to go on holiday and leave Audrey in the hot seat, which the case was fast becoming. We'd had no leads except for the tenuous Belgian link. Homicides in Mallory was far from convinced were connected to our killings. There was growing political pressure, especially from the Dover barrister whose fiancée had been a victim, to appeal to Scotland Yard. And in fact, a man from the Yard had come down, though only in an advisory capacity. So far, Mallory had been lucky. The killings having taken place in different counties, except for our 2, the national papers had not yet connected the dots to generate a Yorkshire Ripper-style panic. I offered to postpone my trip, but Audrey wouldn't hear of it. She knew I was burnt out, had been running on empty for months. My last holiday having been almost 2 years previous. My then girlfriend Janice, now my wife, coaxed me to take her to visit her family in the Scottish Highlands. And though not looking forward to interaction with her rigid parents, I was most assuredly looking forward to a break from the relentless grind. I left on May 1st for 3 weeks. While I was gone, close to the end of the 3rd week, I received an odd phone call from Audrey. Getting a call from her like that was unusual enough, but her demeanor made it doubly so. She was cryptic, and I later realized her voice was tinged with loneliness, a resigned sadness that chilled me. More so later when I knew the details of what had transpired. She told me she was leaving me a document on my desk, a letter she had written with specifics of the case that we had been working with, and I was the only one she completely trusted to know what to do with it if something happened to her. Needless to say, this greatly alarmed me, but she undoubtedly, finally angrily refused to broach the subject of my early return. She said she was operating under excess of caution and anticipated no real danger. After all, she explained lightheartedly, we're in police work, and one never knows the unexpected twists and turns such a life can take. She wouldn't go into any greater detail, but told me where to find the letter when I returned. She strongly asserted that I would never have to read it if things went as smoothly as she hoped. There was a faint undercurrent of doubt in her tone that spooked me, and no matter of reassurance she could offer would put my mind at ease. I agreed to do as she wished, after much cajoling on her part, and wait to return at the appointed time. This is the letter.